My DeviantART story started 8 years ago, as a matter of fact. It started basically when I was still living in Kansas. Um, I, I wanted to basically find a place that. Well, actually, I didn't want to find a place. I just kind of was suggested to it, and I Googled it as well. So suggested, Googled, kind of a combination of both, if I can remember. I mean, it's been 8 years, so, and going through a lot at that time. Um, Over the past 8 years, you can't remember so much as to basically when and why you joined a website. But for me, I joined DeviantArt 8 years ago, and excuse me, and the reason I joined basically was I I wanted to I wanted to be part of a place that not only allowed me to share my creativeness, in other words, photos, if I take pictures that I would color in, because yes, I did color in a lot of the pictures that you see on there, as well as text as well, kind of written stuff, typed up stuff, and even just go and post links to my YouTube videos that I would do of subjects that people would be interested in, and and that was one of the main reasons. Just like anybody else, I wanted to be part of a place that um, allowed me to share that stuff and share my creativeness, share my thoughts on things, and maybe even find and befriend some people that had similar taste that I did, had similar likes that I did. And I remember being on the Yahoo groups for certain things like the melting, like one Yahoo group I'm a part of is about melting women. Actually, there's two groups based on them, and stuff like that, and invisible and women going invisible, stuff like that, shape shifting, transformations, things like that. And I was surprised when DeviantArt uh, not when DeviantArt, but when I saw across DeviantArt and I typed in these keywords like melting, or melted, and shapeshift, and transformations, and even the words for the UBs and the SVs, if you know what I mean, by those abbreviations. And I remember just being surprised, if you will, by by the amount by the amount of people there. I was just surprised about by the amount of people who had not only done fan art on this kind of stuff, but had written stories. You know, as a matter of fact, recently DeviantArt has proven that this kind of stuff is still very popular. These kind of things that I mentioned are still very popular, to the point that when I've been a part of DeviantArt, I've joined various groups based around them. And that's really surprising to say, that I've joined groups based around these things that I've mentioned. And it's just amazing to know that going on a site like this, I've realized I'm not the only one in this world or in this country that is a fan of this kind of stuff. That's a fan of the melting, that's a fan of the shape shifting, fan of the transformations, fan of the UBs and the SVs, fan of women going invisible at times or whatever. You know, fans of the claymation stuff, especially women going into claymation mode and stuff like that. I know that sounds like now I know it sounds like I'm more of the fan of the female gender going through these things, but from what I've seen, and I mean no offense by this, I mean no offense. God knows I don't mean no offense by this, but it seems that the women are always the ones in the stories, whether it's a short little web comic or a story written or typed up. They're the ones always going through these situations. And I can only guess that that's because they're fan favorites of the people that write this stuff, or the people that draw this stuff, the fan favorites. And maybe it's because they see it happening sometimes in other forms of media. Like in cartoons, who's the majority of the gender that melts into a puddle at the sight of an attractive person, or is amored, or is, what's the word, amored by who they see, or what they see. It's the female. And again, I mean no offense, but it's the truth. I mean, you take a look at Animaniacs. Who was the majority of genders that did it? The females, from Dot to mostly Minerva. Minerva did it twice. In Tiny Toons, who did it the most? Babs. Yeah, you could say Plucky kind of tied her a little bit, but who was the most on the female side? Babs. I mean, you think they would have done it eventually with Fifi or Shirley the Loon? They never did. It was mostly Babs on the female side. And then any time a female gets some kind of like slime-like powers or shape-shifting-like powers, it's always their gender that gets chosen. Like in RoboCop, like in an episode of RoboCop Alpha Commandos, there's this one villainess that gains the powers of being like a liquid woman, and she basically can shapeshift herself into a fountain, be a puddle, shapeshift her entire body into a big old hand. I mean, come on. It's just amazing. And again, if that's not enough, look at Batman Beyond. Ink is a female in that category. I mean, go figure. I mean, the point is, it always seems that their gender is chosen the most. And that's why I became and believe it or not, that's why I became a fan of that kind of stuff. I mean, it goes back to when I was a kid, back in 86, 85 and 86. I remember watching at a time when WTBS as it was, when TBS, or WTBS as it was known at the time, aired the Tom and Jerry Funhouse. And it was a variety of cartoons, from Tom and Jerry to Bugs Bunny to Woody Woodpecker and to Popeye. And I remember they came on with a Popeye cartoon, which was Parlez-vous Woos, and at the end of it, what happened? Olive oil melted into a puddle of running butter with just a face on there. With a smiley face. That's it. That's it. And it's like, wow. And then you got shows like Gumby and his claymation, especially the 80s version of Gumby. That definitely got me and anybody else, becoming a fan of that kind of stuff. You had music videos like Sledgehammer, by Peter Gabriel, and then the Eurythmics did their own similar video. I can't think of the name of the video right now, but it basically starts out with the Eurythmics, Annie Lennox, the Eurythmics lead singer. It basically starts out with her face forming out of a dripping form, out of being created through this kind of dripping formula or whatever. So yeah, that kind of stuff, and then combined to what you see with the cartoons and stuff, really makes you want to become a fan of this kind of stuff, these kind of areas. And then you got like shows like Alex Mack. I mean, Secret World of Alex Mack, a live action show that actually gave the female lead the powers of levitation, melting into a puddle of liquid, actually being able to use that liquid portion of herself to merge with other parts of water. I mean, if that kind of stuff doesn't make, those kind of things in shows don't make you a fan, I don't know what does. I do not know what does. And, to me, to see this, excuse me, to see this kind of stuff throughout my time growing up, it's amazing. It really is. It really is amazing. And, that is why I became a fan of that kind of stuff. And that's why when I go in places like DeviantArt, and I see others out there that are fans of the same kind of stuff I am, and they even go in as far as to create groups, it shows that I'm not alone. It shows that I'm not alone in this kind of stuff. And I'm just proud of that. I'm just proud of that fact that I'm not alone. Even when it comes to being a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, I noticed that DeviantArt is one of the bigger, if not most viewed sites when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog fan art, stories, rants, reviews, you name it. I mean, you got several Sonic-related groups made here, if not a lot of them. You have an Archie Sonic group, an anti-Archie Sonic group, a Save Archie Sonic group, or a Save Archie. You got like I was saying, you have an anti-Archie Sonic group, you have an Archie Sonic Club group, you have a Save Archie Sonic group. You have groups dedicated to Sonic pairings, whether it's straight or otherwise. You have groups dedicated to single characters like Sally and Bunny and Blaze and Sonic himself and Tails and Cosmo and Mina, and Hershey and and Knuckles and Julie Sue, and the list can go on. Silver, Shadow, the list goes on. And you have groups dedicated to several of the shows, several of the cartoons that this franchise was based off, like Sat AM, Sonic Underground, Sonic X, and now even I think Sonic Boom's got a group. It's just really amazing to me of how much the Sonic fan base uses DeviantArt to express themselves. So to me, that is also why I joined DeviantArt, because it's not just because of what I mentioned. It's not just because of me being a fan, an intrigued fan, if you will, of the melting and the shape-shifting and the transformations and the invisibilities and this and that, the UBs and the SVs and all that. But it's also because I've been a fan of of shows like Sonic the Hedgehog, franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, and to see a majority of the fans using sites like DeviantArt to express themselves visually through fan art, literally or verbally, I should say verbally, through written work. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing to me that a site like DeviantArt can do that, and that is another reason I joined. And then you got groups based on other stuff that I've liked, like Chippendale Rescue Rangers. I'm a fan of that show, and and you have several groups dedicated to Chippendale Rescue Rangers. You have several groups dedicated to Foxglove, a single one-shot character that, of course, made her return in the Boom Studio comics. You have Gadget Hackwrench. She has several sites dedicated to her, as well as other characters like Tammy and, maybe even Kanita LaFleur, I think, has got a group. I mean, fans just dedicate groups to these kind of characters because they want to express the fandom, the love for the characters. You have Tailspin groups, you have Mighty Duck groups, you have several of those. You have an MTDS group, you have a straight out Mighty Ducks group. These are based on the cartoons, not the movies or the hockey show. You have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle groups. I mean, you got a lot of those. You got a TMNT group. You got a Ninja Turtles group. You name it. You got April O'Neil group. You got Ninjara group. You got Mona Lisa group. I mean, the list goes on and on. And this is why I love being part of DeviantArt. This is why I was happy to join DeviantArt 8 years ago. Because of things like this. Because here you have a website that allows you to be a fan, not be a fan, but allows you as a fan to interact with other fans of the same, that are fans of the same stuff you're a fan of. I know that sounds a little confusing, but it's true. It allows you to interact with those out there that are fans of the same stuff you are and not ashamed to express it. You know, you got, like I said, going back to groups based on things, you got Scooby-Doo groups, several of those. You got a Shaggy Daphne group, which is basically a group dedicated to Shaggy and Daphne being together. I mean, you name it, you got it. You got a SWAT Cats group. You know, you name it, it's there. You got a Yogi Bear and Cindy. You got a Yogi and Cindy Bear group. You know, I mean, I look around my room right now, and there's not one thing that I'm looking at that probably doesn't have a group of fans dedicating a whole group on DeviantArt to that franchise. And to me, that is why I love being part of DeviantArt. You know, this is why I joined 8 years ago, because I wanted to be part of a group. I wanted to be part of a site that had the same kind of people that were fans of the same stuff I've been a fan of, and weren't ashamed to write it, even to this day. Even to this day, I mean, I'll give you an example. This one group that was created dedicated to a series of stories based on transformations, and it's called the Trust Machines. And if you don't know what Trust Machines are, they're basically a series of stories created by several different different online fanfic writers here at DeviantArt. And basically, Trust Machines is about a machine called the Venn machine, which people use by popping in, such an amount of money, for either several hours, maybe up to 8 hours, for a week, a month, a year, whatever, several months, a year, or several years. They use this Venn machine and the Trust Machine stories to turn themselves into practically anything or anyone. And again, for some odd reason, and I mean no offense by this, I mean no offense, God knows I don't, the majority of characters used to be venned to end in these stories, that's how they call it, venned. That's the word they use in the stories. Vend themselves, transform themselves into different people or different objects or whatever, or even animals or mammals, is women. Women are the majority. And again, I don't know if it's because, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's maybe because women make it more interesting or more mischiefy, have more fun with it. I don't know. And again, I mean no offense by that. But basically, you have groups that are dedicated to stories like that. It shows you why people enjoy being part of DeviantArt. Why I enjoy looking back at the past 8 years, why I've enjoyed being part of DeviantArt. Because it's something different. It's a place for everybody. Get this. If you're a parent, it allows you to choose whether or not you want to have mature stuff on or off. I mean, let's say your kid is on the computer and they stumble upon DeviantArt. If you know they're going to be on the computer, like let's say they got to do homework, and they just decide, hey, I'm going to go to this DeviantArt site, and you pretty much know they're going to do that. You can turn off during the day, you can turn off the maturity level on the DeviantArt stuff, and they don't see it. You get my drift? If you get my drift. But the point is, this is a site that I'm proud to say, that I became part of 8 years ago. I am proud to say that I've become online friends with several of the people here, because several of the people here at DeviantArt also have accounts over at places like Furfinient and YouTube. And that's surprising enough. And even on Facebook. So I'm proud to say that I've met some people and befriended some people, even though I've never seen them face to face. I am proud to say I've become friends with some people, or at least have respect for people that, like me, are fans of the same kind of stuff that I've mentioned earlier. And they're not afraid of it. I mean, this is why I've gone out and I've requested and I've commissioned several people throughout the years to do stuff for me, because they're fans of that stuff. They're fans just like I am. They've gone and done it. There's one person right now that I've commissioned and requested several stories from, and they're currently working on them. And then of course there are some that are fans of the same stuff I am, that when I go and request or commission something from them, they come out and they tell me, look, I'd love to do it, but right now I'm too busy. I've got too much on my mind. I've got too much to do. I've got other commissions, other requests to do. And I can respect that. I can understand and respect that. So it's not a problem for me. I mean, I can learn to wait down the line. But to me, looking back at the past 8 years here on DeviantArt, I am happy to say that I am part of this group. I mean, back when I lived on my own, I even had enough money back when I lived on my own to get someone known as BBMMFF, who's better well known for his PAL Comics website that he's a part of. I even went as far, when I had the money, to buy him for the short term a premium membership, because he needed a premium membership to basically do certain things. And in turn, he drew me a picture in return. So he drew me a picture in return of basically it's a Sonic related picture. But anyway, he did that for me in return, and I'm happy about that. So to me, I'm looking back at the past 8 years, I'm proud to be part of DeviantArt. I'm not ashamed to say I'm a part of DeviantArt. I'm proud of it. The only thing I have to do sometimes, right now that I live with my mom, is I have to be careful about what she thinks of it. Because if she walks into my room or into the rec room and I'm on DeviantArt and she sees it, she may misinterpret it for something wrong, for something bad, and I don't need that. So again, I'm not ashamed to be part of DeviantArt, but I think just like anybody that's part of DeviantArt, you have to be careful about what others think. And believe me, I can say this, in my past 8 years with this group, and then I know for everybody else that's come out and told their DeviantArt story for the past several years or year or whatever they've been part of DeviantArt, they've all dealt with the same thing I've dealt with. They've all dealt with cyberbullying. Basically, you have people coming on DeviantArt, hackers, cyberbullies, that basically will tease you and ridicule you for being part of this group, but part of this site. Will tease you and bully you and ridicule you for being a fan of the stuff that I've mentioned. And why? All because they have nothing else to do. They have nothing else to do. And you know what? Sometimes I look at it this way. It's like I said about a certain website several years ago, and I'm not going to mention them right now, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows what site I'm talking about. But it's pretty much like this one website. I believe that a lot of these people on DeviantArt that cyberbully, hack, and tease and ridicule are nothing more than teenagers. They're young male teenagers that have nothing else to do but to get on there and tease. Whether it's young teenagers in the early teens, like 13, 14, maybe even preteen, like 12 or maybe 11. You know, they come on to a site like DeviantArt and they have nothing else better to do, and they see this kind of stuff. They pretty much say, hey, here's an easy target we could tease. There's this, there's that. They just don't get it. And yeah, it could be mid-teens and late teens that do the same thing too. But majority of the time, I think it's more of the pre-teens, early teens, and maybe even the mid-teens that do it. The late teens maybe, but not as much. And all I could say is that all we have to do is ignore them and move on. That's all you have to do. But to me, they only do it because pretty much they have nothing else better to do, and they think, oh, if I ridicule this person, say that about that person, it shows I'm better. No, you're not. You're not better. You're not better than anybody. Basically, what you are is just somebody that's bored out of their mind because they got nothing else to do. So, that's all I'm going to say, folks, on my DeviantArt story. Again, I am proud to be part of DeviantArt for the past I am proud to have been part of DeviantArt for the past 8 years and hope to be part of it for many years to come. I really do. And as far as these things that we keep hearing about, these SOPAs, these PIPPers, all these groups that pretty much scare the heck out of people because they want to shut down the internet and the freedom of the internet, well, you know what? They're not going to win, because pretty much they know that the more they try to pressure this kind of stuff onto the internet and onto the people, the more that the people in the internet itself is going to fight back and pretty much it's going to become a losing battle for them. So don't worry, DeviantART's not going anywhere. That's all I have to say, folks. Again, I am proud to be part of this site. I am proud to have joined 8 years ago, because I now see that I'm not the only one I'm not the only one out there that's a fan of the stuff that I've mentioned, from the melting, the shape-shifting, the invisibilities, the transformations, Sonic, Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Gummy Bears, you name it, Ninja Turtles, you name it, Transformers, you name it. I am glad to say I am not a fan. I am glad to say I am not alone in being a fan of these kind of things. Heck, you have one person that's a fan of the new My Little Pony Friendships and Magic. And basically taking two very popular characters known as Trixie and Twilight and put them together as friends, as pony-fied genies. They can basically turn into anything or grant any kind of wish. Heck, one of my favorites recently is you had the Trixie genie get blown up like a balloon. She gets blown up, and then to kind of get back at Twilight, she basically absorbs her, or basically covers her up like a suit. Get my drift? You kind of get what I'm saying. But again, it's that kind of stuff that if some people were ashamed, they wouldn't put it on DeviantArt, but they're not. They're not ashamed. Just like I'm not ashamed. The only thing we have to be careful with is if we live with people, just got to be careful about what they think. That's all you have to do. Because if they're family, yeah, they might think something differently, or they may not think at all. Or they may not think of nothing of it, but again, they may think something of it. And that's only with family. Everybody else, like I said, these cyberbullies, hackers, whatever, don't worry about them. They're probably just early teens, early to mid-teens, and somewhat late teens. They have nothing else better to do than to bully, because they think they're better than everybody else. What's funny is I was watching one of Bob Schuex's reviews on the CyberKitties comics, and one of them basically showcased what kind of bullies these can be. And what kind of bullies these can be are just people like you and me that are fans of certain things, but they don't want people to know it, so they go out and they bully because they're ashamed maybe of being a fan of that kind of stuff. But then again, that's just my opinion. So once again, in closing, I will say this: I am not ashamed. I am proud to be part of this group and part of this site. I'm happy I joined 8 years ago. I'm happy I befriended people on this site. I'm happy that there are others out there on this site that are fans of the stuff that I am. And that's all I have to say, folks. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, and I'll talk to you all later. God bless. Take care. And I am proud to be here for 8 years on DeviantArt.